Hi guys, I would like to share with you how I went about using a page from Daphne's diary and turning it into a book page mini journal flip. Now, I used gesso to actually cover over my magazine pages because there are lots of images that you can see in the magazines which I actually wanted to stamp on and actually write on. I actually want to do some journaling on these little particular books. Now here's two examples that I used. I made these little two from book pages from Daphne's diary, heavily stamped and distressed using Tim Holtz distress ink, and basically you can see that it gives me a nice surface, the white gesso. And also I have done some of these already in a tutorial, but I used a different size book page, and I just want to share with you that basically you can take anything that you have in hand. We will probably look at downsizing as well at a later date, but for the moment these are just some of the things that I've got up to, and I'd like to sort of encourage you to look at what you've got kicking around the house. Doesn't have to be a Daphne's diary. It could be my mum absolutely adores wrapping my Christmas presents up or birthday presents in magazine pages. She has really got into this upcycling mode. So let's get sort of on some type of track here. So I've just selected a page from Daphne's diary, and these happen to be well over, I believe we're looking at around about 11 inches by I think just shy of 9. So there's about an inch different from the other one that I done, and this will give us a little extra flap. I have used a product called gesso. Well, that's all well and good, but what is gesso? Well, it is a product that can be purchased from a good art supplier. It says it's a universal primer, and the long and short of it is you could just cover your paper in any type of acrylic wash that you wanted to, but this happens to have like a very gritty surface, and it's really great for using stamps on. I mean, I have a tendency to like StazOn, but there's also Tim Holtz distress inks, and what we don't want to do is the inks to bleed through to the other side of our paper. Now what you'll see, we've got images going on this side, but we've got predominantly a lot of written work on this side. I've taken my quilter's rule, which is a 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch square, which I have duly put a pencil mark round because we're going to cut out the right hand side of our paper. Now on my previous tutorial I just stuck with the right hand side. There's absolutely no reason why you can't put it in the left. Yet again, there's no reason why I'm keeping the paper so it's the right way up. Absolutely no reason why you can't flip your piece of paper and literally do it the opposite way round. Who says there's a right or a wrong going on here? This just happens to be my approach on this at this particular moment in time. It is about making this work evolve, making it work for you, getting you to look at things that you may discard. So I've got a pair of scissors. I haven't cut this particular one out. I'm just going to literally run with it. So all in all, I have had some wonderful comments in the comments box, and thank you ever so much for always being as supportive as you are and offering praise, which is always inspirational, not only for me but I think for others as well if you read some of the comments in the comment box. Naturally, I have a lot on at present moment, and I'm sure all of you do in your lives, but I will get round at some point or other to try and thank you all in person, and sometimes try and address little things that you have actually made extra inquiries about. I did suggest that at a later date we are going to do something with these particular squares. If you happen to have an envelope punch board, then instinctively you can always make envelopes straight away. But if you don't, we'll have other ways of actually making these work for ourselves. Now, what I've done here is obviously gessoed the entire page beforehand, back and front. It's also had an evening to dry prior to me actually working on it. If you have a heat gun, you can hit it with a heat gun. Now, this particular paper isn't shiny and absorbs the paint very easily. If I hit it with a heat gun, it has a tendency, because it's so wet, so quick with heat, it has a tendency to slightly buckle. Yet again, I'm not looking for perfection, but you may prefer, if you leave it for 24 hours, you're going to get a better result with it air drying than you are if you hit it with heat straight away. Now we've got our L shape. I did do a tutorial. We're going to work pretty much predominantly on the same process. I'm going to fold, I'm going to crease, I'm going to turn around. We are now looking at the bottom flap. We can fold it up and this will allow us a little pocket. For tutorial's sake, I'm moving through this a little bit quicker. Take your time, make sure that roughly speaking it all marries up quite nicely. I've literally got my L shape, which is now a rectangle. I'm going to take the paper back on itself and find its natural butting up with the other section of paper and crease. Flip it back over again. I'm now going to crease down this section. I'm going to fold it back on itself. And because this paper is larger than the original tutorial demonstration, we're now going to have an extra piece of paper that we can actually turn and fold over, and I think that works as either another nice tuck spot, or you can just leave it as is, an extra space for journaling. You could even, if you've got decorative punch, you could even punch down the outside line. There's so many possibilities. It's still work in progress. It's still, you can offer up your own little twist to this. So for the moment, we've now got a few little pages that we can go ahead, stamp, colour, decorate with more paint. You could even get your stencils out. Yeah, I see absolutely no reason why not. Got some with spring approaching at the time that I'm making this video, I've got some stamps already placed onto some acrylic blocks. I've got more stamps on these acrylic blocks than I probably should have, to be perfectly honest, but this is really for the tutorial's sake at the end of it. So I am going to just go ahead and see if we can stamp this one up with a spring theme. And I do like to have some sort of emphasis on my particular little book page flips. And this is where you see me try and line everything up. It's always helpful if it actually reads the right way up to the viewer as well as to myself. So we've got something going on here with spring. And I've got a little rabbit somewhere in amongst my collection. So I'm just using my black StazOn ink here. I think it's Tuxedo Black, if my memory serves me right. I've also got some pens, some colouring pencils. Now, this is the little bit, I don't want it to go over the flap. And if it does, well, we'll just work on that accordingly. So there we have our bunny rabbit. Now I want to do, you can see the writing underneath. If I look around, I've just got this little Paper Mania from Do Crafts, little clear stamp, which just makes it look like a little notebook page. And I think that is really quite handy if you're a little bit afraid of actually writing freehand. It's nice to have some lines actually already on your piece of paper. So there are little helpful bits and pieces that we can find in our stash. And also I think you need some plain bits here, because my idea is you're going to journal about your day. I'm also going to put this at an angle. I much prefer the idea of it slightly off centre, and then nobody really knows if you've slightly gone off. There's no reason why you can't even go straight off the page, to be honest with you. There you go, and you can see that we're slowly building this up. I've got a lovely little miniature ladybird that I'm going to apply here, because I think that's really kind of sweet. And bit by bit, this is beginning to come together. So we've got a ladybird, we've got the notebook. I may now consider putting another little saying at the bottom here, or in my case, I've got a little lamb here. And with us still working on that spring theme. So all in all, I think you're beginning to see how this is working. And that one I will just press down there. Like so. And I think that's really quite striking about how this is coming together. And then that gives us more areas there for us to actually, I mean, we can doodle on. I can get some colouring pencils out. I know I keep going on about my colouring pencils, but I've also got some chalks as well. And on some of my work, I'm just aware that I'm just going to put my lid on my ink, because I'm the type of person that leaves it sitting on the side. It dries out, so it doesn't hurt to have the lid applied sooner rather than later. I have actually edged some of my work with some ink. Now these have been edged with distress ink, but there's no reason why you can't just edge it if you've got a little bit of chalk, or even I even run some felt tip pen around the outside edge. So you can see I'm just going to distress it. It will take a lot longer this way than it would if you got some distress ink in your collection. But basically I'm just going to get good old fingertips in there. It's just literally about using what you've got in your stash, and that is just going to give me a little bit of an edge, and then you can run it down and define if you want. Who said you have to use one set product? I mean, there's no reason why, in my case, you can't even get out a tea bag. And can you see now that we've got that little distress line coming along there? We could take a pair of scissors and ruffle along the outside edge and get that a little bit more pitted. And then that would be just a lovely little finish. This is me thinking out loud whilst we've got these stamps drying here. We can also, I'll get back to a little bit of thinking about colours. So I have got in my collection some pens. I've got my Sugarloaf here, and we can literally, these are great because they are non-toxic, they're acid free, and we can just hit this particular lamb with a little bit of ink. Just enough so it starts bringing up a small amount of colour on our page. Right guys, I think you can see where we're going from there. Hopefully you enjoyed. I look forward to hearing from you in the future, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye bye.